Marketing with articles, how to be an awesome beginner. There are two conflicting feelings that pop up when you start learning something new. First, there is the feeling of hope and excitement. You're going on a type of adventure. You're doing things that you never thought that you would or could do. Unfortunately, there can also be the feeling of being overwhelmed, vulnerable, and out of your depth. I was watching one of those dance competition shows on TV. The idea is that each dancer would be exposed to types of dances that are outside his or her specialty. I had never thought of it before, but just because you're a great ballroom dancer does not mean that you can do contemporary or hip-hop very well. So, it really is a challenge for these dancers to get out of their comfort zones and dance in styles that they're not familiar with. All of the dancers are exceptional in their own field, but many of them give up when they're forced to be a beginner in another type of dancing. They just don't like how it feels to be new at something they thought they had mastered. Others may not be the best dancer, but they thrive in the competition because they are not afraid to be a beginner. They make themselves vulnerable and are willing to ask their bodies to move in ways that seem foreign to them. That dance competition is a lot like when someone starts marketing with articles for the first time. I meet a lot of beginners, and it's a very common experience to feel uncomfortable and impatient with your progress. For those of you who are just starting to market your website with articles, here are some article marketing tips for you. Tip number 1. Don't compare yourself to others. It's so tempting, but it really doesn't help at all. You'll also be likely to compare yourself to people who are more advanced, which makes you feel like you're behind. If you think that everyone else is learning faster than you or is more advanced than you, do a reality check. In reality, there are tons of people who are in the same situation as you are. You are surrounded by beginners. Also, every person is different and you will learn at your own pace, so stop comparing. Tip number 2. Accept that you need to be a beginner before you can become advanced. People who are used to being experts in their own field will often not like the feeling of starting at square one in another field. It can be an uncomfortable feeling, like it was for those professional dancers I mentioned earlier. One thing that may help with this is to remember that every expert started out as a beginner at some point. There was a time when Michelangelo was a beginner at painting. There was a time when Beethoven couldn't read music. There was a time when Michael Phelps didn't know how to swim like you. They all had to go through the stage of being a beginner. It's unavoidable, so you might as well not fight it. Tip number 3. Focus on writing articles for your niche. That is something that you can do as a beginner, and it's a skill that only develops the more you do it. Learning to write articles is your main job as a beginner. Tip number 4. Focus on being consistent with your article submissions. Although it sounds very basic, lack of consistency is where most people fall down with article submissions. No matter how new you are, you can get in the habit of submitting articles consistently, even from day 1. Tip number 5. Don't rush your learning. If you've done any research on article marketing, you know it's a lot to take in. There are different levels of skill and knowledge, and if you try to take on the more advanced concepts while you're still in the beginner stage, chances are you'll get overwhelmed and confused. Instead, take things a little at a time. Yes, there are lots of advanced things you can learn as you grow in your skill, but don't feel like you need to get there the first week. If you take anything from this article, I would like for you to just relax and let yourself be a beginner. Enjoy the good things about starting to learn a new skill. Enjoy the hope and the surprise that you're doing things you never thought you would. Many times people get overwhelmed with all the advanced concepts of article marketing, and then they get discouraged. It really doesn't need to be like that though. As a beginner, you have a job: learn to write articles and get in the habit of submitting them consistently. That is enough for now. You can tackle more advanced skills later on.